You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday, the 17th of June 2013. Scots police smash 2 large paedophile rings. Head of Army warns further cuts are dangerous. Asylum seekers cost UK £1.5 million a day. Anti-fascists fuel the fire of hate. The Roma conundrum. Netherlands, Senate leader quits over Wilder's role in new King's investiture. Children's books targeted for promoting nuclear family. Thought for the day, what is the root of all evil? And finally, small tits, big bum, Aussie. Before the news, I'd like to thank all the suggestions that came over in the weekend, and don't stop them coming as they're giving us something to work along. One of the many suggestions is music, pictures and dancing girls, all of which unfortunately take time and money, but never mind, we will endeavour to please. Now from Daryl, having a supportive public comments section of the website which could be read on air. This is a good one, although I do read all the comments, I don't read all of them out, as some are very long and can be off topic, but I think that idea is a good one. The second idea from Daryl is that we dedicate a couple of slots a week to BNP activists and members who are active in their areas. Another good one to work on. Remember that all comments have been taken on board, but also remember that all singing, all dancing news will take more time and money to organise. Just a little note to our donees. Now the news, my friends. UK news. Scots police smash 2 large paedophile rings. Scottish police have smashed 2 large-scale child sex networks involving a significant proportion of ethnic minority offenders. In another utterly appalling example of child abuse, 2 13-year-old Scots girls were groomed and raped by a network of numerous paedophiles across Britain. This operation resulted in 37 arrests and the identification of 108 further potential victims and perpetrators. Again, all of those involved are still awaiting trial. The details of the crackdown were revealed by Assistant Chief Constable Malcolm Graham to a Holyrood inquiry into the scale of child abuse. Mr Graham said, in 2 large-scale CSE investigations in Scotland, a significant proportion of the identified perpetrators were from ethnic minority communities. It's not possible to draw conclusions from this relatively small data set, and more accurate data and wider research is required. It is acknowledged extremist groups have attempted to associate CSE, child sexual abuse, with wider immigration issues, and this has the potential for significant unrest. However, a police source added, there are groups of foreign nationals involved in this, and maybe respect for women isn't seen as being a high priority in their country of origin. Senior officers also fear the involvement of ethnic minority offenders in child sexual exploitation will lead to significant community tension. World at 8 says, we've heard this PC bullshit for years, usually covering the identity of the men, who are usually of the Muslim persuasion. Why are the police protecting these people and not the children? One really has to worry when the law of a country protects the foreign criminals and not the victims. This is what Nick Griffin went to court for. Who will take up the Scottish cudgels? The SNP? Don't make me laugh. Head of Army warns further cuts are dangerous. Britain's chances of winning future wars will be seriously damaged by more crippling spending cuts, the country's top soldier has warned. General Sir Peter Wall, the head of the army, said further savings likely to be ordered by the government could prove quite dangerous quite soon. Under current plans, the size of the army is being reduced from 102,000 3 years ago to 82,000, small enough for every soldier to fit inside Wembley Stadium. World at 8 states, this is worrying news. It means in short that England or the English will be unable to defend either themselves or their country from enemies within. But maybe this is the plan. Asylum seekers cost UK £1.5 million a day. Britain's shambolic asylum system set taxpayers back more than £1.5 million a day last year, or a total of £583 million on 37,000 asylum claims. 2 out of 3 cases of people trying to stay in the UK were more than a year old, and nearly 14,000 had waited at least 3 years, according to official figures. The money went on housing, cash support, legal bills and paperwork. But the total doesn't include asylum seekers' legal aid bills, the cash spent on them by councils, or the cost of a backlog of hundreds of thousands of other migration cases. Campaigners yesterday condemned the huge cost of would-be refugees, roughly $14,500 per case. World at 8 says, now put that with the so-called steps to be taken by the Conservatives of cutting immigration by a third, and you'll realise just how pathetic that step is in reality. Anti-fascists fuel the fire of hate. One reason why UAF will not campaign against Islamic extremists is that one of its own vice-chairman, Azid Ali, is one. As well as his Unite Against Fascism role, which he took up last year, Mr Ali is Community Affairs Coordinator of the Islamic Forum of Europe, a Muslim supremacist group dedicated to changing the very infrastructure of its society, its institutions, its culture, its political order and its creed from ignorance to Islam. Mr Ali has written on his blog of his love for Anwar al-Awlaki, the al-Qaeda cleric closely linked to many terrorist plots, including the September 11 attacks, and used to attend talks by Abu Qatada, the extremist cleric whom Britain is seeking to deport. He has described al-Qaeda as a myth and denied that the Mumbai attacks were terrorism. On his blog he also advocated the killing of British troops in Iraq. He sued a newspaper for reporting that he had said this and lost. World at 8 says, coals to Newcastle mateys, coals to Newcastle. Now you know who forms a major part of the UAF scum and their rhetoric, which is drummed into our youth and liberals. When will they really listen? European news. The Roma conundrum. Large numbers of Roma immigrants from southeastern Europe are proving to be a serious integration problem for many cities, including Berlin. A local politician recently travelled to Romania to learn more about the challenge. Franziska Giffey is sitting at a wooden table in Romania and trying to grasp what is happening in her neighbourhood back in Berlin. Why do people in Romania leave their home country to come to Neukölln, one of the poorest city districts in Germany? She's sitting in the office of the mayor of Fontanelle, 35 kilometres, 22 miles, from the Romanian capital of Bucharest. The town once had 3,000 residents, all of them Roma, but a third of them no longer live here. They've moved elsewhere in Europe, and a majority of them have come to Neukölln in Berlin. There are many villages like Fontanelle throughout the southeastern Europe, and most of them now have an outpost in Germany. Fontanelle's mayor is excited. The mayor has called all city administrators here, as well as the town's 2 priests and the school principal, who has lost 300 of her students to other countries around Europe. Giffey stands up and introduces herself, and then she talks about her district. Berlin's Neukölln district has 300,000 residents of 160 nationalities, and there are 65 schools, of which nearly half offer welcome classes for children, many of them Roma, with no knowledge of German. I open a new class every month, she tells the town administrators gathered before her. You must be missing those children here, aren't you? There is laughter. Then a priest answers, go ahead and set up a couple of more classes. World at 8 states, and that is the mantra of these people. If you're stupid enough to let them in, you deserve what you get. To a great extent they're right. We Europeans need to stand up for our countries, not to take the flotsam and jetsam of other countries to the detriment of our own peoples. That isn't racist thinking, it is survivalist thinking. Netherlands. Senate leader quits over Wilder's role at new king's investiture. The leader of the Senate has resigned over claims he kept anti-immigration MP Geert Wilders out of the official escort for King Willem-Alexander during his investiture at the Nauwkerk in Amsterdam. Earlier this week the Volkskrant reported that Fred de Graaf used his role as Master of Ceremonies to keep Wilders away from the new king. Wilders is not only a controversial figure because of his position on Islam, he has also been highly critical of what he called Queen Beatrix's multicultural leanings. Wilders welcomed de Graaf's decision to step down, saying it was only a logical decision. The Senate chairman should be neutral, and this was clearly not the case, Wilders is quoted as saying. De Graaf told the paper he had tried to ensure the escort reflected the makeup of Parliament, was divided between men and women and focused on long-serving MPs. However, he also kept in mind the prospective attention which would be paid to Wilders if he was in close proximity to the King. De Graaf said Wilders is one of the longest-serving Dutch MPs. World-at-Date comments. Beatrix is also a Bilderberg persona. More of that later. World News. Children's books targeted for promoting nuclear family. Children's media use cuddly animals to reinforce racist and socially dominant norms. Parents who read their kids stories about happy human-like animals are like Franklin the Turtle or Arthur at bedtime, are exposing their kids to racism, materialism, homophobia and patriarchal norms, according to a paper presented at the Congress of the Humanities and Social Sciences. Most animals portrayed in children's books, songs and on clothing send a bad message, according to academics Nora Timmerman and Julia Ostertag. That animals only exist for human use, that humans are better than animals, that animals don't have their own stories to tell, that it's fine to demean them by cooing over their cuteness. Perhaps worst of all, they say, animals are anthropomorphised to reinforce socially dominant norms like nuclear families and gender stereotypes. World-at-Date says these people should be shot. Most authors have to use animals, otherwise they wouldn't get published if they used white humans relevant to the country they come from. The days of Janet and John have long gone, but even then we still have the organised PC troublemakers out for blood. Is this what they're paid for? Thought for the day. What is the root of all evil? The root of all evil is the love of money, and I would extend that to a love of power and control over all. That is evil, because no one person, business, religion, corporation or government should be able to hold sway over all. This is what Lucifer offered Jesus on the Mount. Control over everything the eye could see, as long as he played good old Lucy's tune. Now, I'm not about to enter into a religious sermon here. I'll leave that to our Reverend West, who'll be back this coming Sunday. But you can see where I'm going here, I'm sure. One of the suggestions that came in was that I should read happier news, and I would oblige if there were any really happy news to read. If you put up with me till the end of World-at-Date, you will normally find a "and finally," which is usually strange, funny or odd news snippets. I would be nothing short of delirious myself if the great British public developed a set of balls that saw beyond the latest footy game or Xbox or six-pack and stopped believing everyone on the TV news or the media. I would be laughing my whatsits off with sheer happiness. I have got emails on the Bilderberg group, which seems to have reared its ugly head again with a meeting that the British taxpayers seem to have funded. According to the Telegraph, taxpayers are likely to have to pay millions of pounds towards the cost of policing the secretive Bilderberg meeting of the global elite due to gather in Hertfordshire this week. Previous guests are thought to have included Henry Kissinger, David Rockefeller, Prince Charles, Peter Mandelson, David Cameron and Queen Beatrix of Holland, but the list of attendees is different every year. I'm actually still waiting for my invitation, but of course I'm not rich enough or famous enough in reality. Also, I might have slightly differing views to them. The cloak of secrecy surrounding the meetings, which bans journalists from attending, has fueled conspiracy theories that so-called Bilderbergers are planning global domination and world unification. However, the event is most often likened to a political version of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, which draws members of high society to discuss business and the economy. And if you believe that, my friends, you will believe anything. It isn't just nutcases and conspiracy theorists that seek to tell the truth as they see it. The trouble with these people and others is that they are 90% truth tellers with the odd 10% of crap, and it is that 10% that put people off. Who knows if David Icke is correct in his lizard people theory? He may well be, but he ain't the son of God, that's for sure. See what I mean? It's often a case of media disinformation and worse that makes some theorists, and indeed the cause of nationalism itself, a source of media and public hilarity and disbelief. These same gainsayers are not so eager to pinpoint other seemingly corrupt peoples and organisations which often form the root of power control groups like the Bilderberg echelons, to name just one, and which, like demons, are legion. Ask yourself why self-styled help groups have meetings throughout the world, held in very plush surroundings with equally plush attendees, most, if not all of which are extremely rich, pontificating over the expensive champagne on the state of the poorest countries in the world, and indeed probably all of Western Europe and America to boot, and which in reality should, if genuine about helping the poor, put those monies saved in not meeting into those countries to help. This is because they are not formed to help stop poverty. They are formed to make sure that poverty and illness benefit them and their cohorts. There may be an even larger body of people and corporations than the Bilderbergers who could just be the front men and the ones the media are told to concentrate on, to take the heat off the real power men. Real power and real evil is silent and deadly. It doesn't operate on the world stage. It operates underneath the world stage and the public eye. It operates underneath the web and probably incorporates the web and all forms of public and social media as well. So every time you go on Facebook or Twitter, you're feeding the monster. What is that saying? The devil has done his job very well in making people believe he doesn't exist. I truly believe that every time we shop at a supermarket, we're feeding the monster. Every time we vote, we're feeding the monster. When we take our children to school, we are feeding the monster. Every time every person in every country, but mainly the Western world, goes about their life in what has become a normal way, they are feeding the monsters, and those monsters are the massive corporations and bankers and warmongers who make money out of other people's misery and troubles, regardless of what country or lifestyle they pertain to. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not a survivalist, an anti-capitalist or a nihilist. I believe in the workings and order of law and structure, and I know that nothing is perfect because the human condition is not perfect. But in the Western world especially, we hold conferences on how to feed the starving when we waste more money in the UK than we eat. We hold conferences on the medical benefits for the third world when in fact we sell the third world or experiment on them with old or very new medications for money. We have turned areas of Africa into barren wastelands, encouraging them to grow flowers for our supermarkets out of season, thus reducing their arable land for their farmers. What for? Money. The Western world, and no doubt members of these powerful groups, make billions of dollars or pounds or whatever out of simply not patenting cancer cures, because cancer is a huge business now and pays very well, thank you. No one makes money out of a healthy population, so we're encouraged to eat badly or cheaply, whichever is more effective. GPs are discouraged by lack of money to prescribe what is cheapest, not the most effective medicines, and the mantra from the mainstream medical media is that we are beating cancer, more than 500 drugs being developed today, new vaccines being invented, and even going the way of microchips being implanted. But the whole awful truth is that modern medicine, despite all the billions pumped into research and all the animals killed in the search for a cure for various forms of cancer, is that no single meaningful advance has been achieved in over 50 years. And the risk in the UK of a 5-year survival rate is lower by 10% than in Canada, Sweden, Norway and Denmark. Why? Because pharmaceutical industries make more money out of sick people than they do well people. Many so-called more natural cures are lying filed away because they would not pay so many people to experiment on, less animals would be killed, thus obviating the need for expensive breeding programs, and the patent departments would not be able to patent a natural cure which has been around for thousands of years. Work it out. These power men have worked it out, and it suits their machinations to have ill people, depressed people, people who have lost hope, drunk people, people who take drugs because their companies and corporations make more money out of these people than they do a highly functioning and operational population. And you see my meaning of the word evil. In the last century, world wars have been started not to prevent a new world order, but to promote it. Wars have been started to train troops, bring back national pride, provide governments with more reasons to tax people, fund the armaments and offshoots of the war providers, and provide money to invent more ways of killing people. I'm sure that a group exists somewhere that has been fully informed as to the results that massive immigration of certain peoples into Europe will bring, namely the reduction of the indigenous white European populations and the regrowth of a religion that, if left to itself, would run out of people and land if left alone in Arabia or Africa. And so Islam becomes the movable pawns of this group, even though they may not realise it. The Conservatives, David Cameron being invited into the Bilderberg hive, have come out with a statement to cut all immigration by a third in some time zone not relevant at present, losing fact of the matter that whether we deported all illegals and cut immigration by a third immediately, we would still be outbred and outvoted by the numbers of foreigners breeding already in this country. This is yet more political dissemination for the masses. Do you really think that the so-called allies before the last war didn't know what was going to really happen in Germany and other countries of Europe when the rich Jews had taken over the reins in pre-war Germany after the Treaty of Versailles, which was a call to arms for the weakest nation to take up? Hitler got too strong too quickly for the rest of Europe, but his sabre rattling of the Jewish problem had gone on for many years before, and truth be told, we in the UK and America made it difficult for those Jews who could afford to leave Germany to come to other countries in the West, and I'm including their American cousins here who were more anti-Jewish than us Brits. I do of course include the very wealthy Jewish banksters in the US who really didn't give a toss for their poor relations. The US only came into the war through the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, which was another group effort and the plan of which Roosevelt knew well in advance. Enough said. Wars are made nowadays. They don't happen by accident or one person falling off his perch. Syria is the only significant crude oil producing country in the eastern Mediterranean region, which includes Jordan, Lebanon, Israel, the West Bank and Gaza. According to the Oil and Gas Journal, Syria had 2.5 billion barrels of petroleum reserves as of 1st of January 2010. So Syria has oil. The West will back the rebels in Syria because big money is behind it, and obviously poor old Assad has not paid his dues. As Gaddafi blew his chances with the Lockerbie bombings, these power men will come and they will get you, and it will all be done under the guise of caring and democracy towards whatever people they care to care for. Look at Mugabe, a murderer of whites and blacks, but not a wealthy enough one, and whose land is not coveted by the West, just by China of course. Look at Amin, he gave his Asians 24 hours to get out of his country or he would not guarantee their safety. And what happened? All the bastards came over here and not a word was said, not a peep from the Bilderbergers or their like. And that was the start of the Islamification of our country. And who has said anything about it but us nationalists? Zilch is who. The Bilderberg group will probably discuss who or what they can invade because oil will run out in about 10 years. In fact, just in time for them to invent an electric car or biofuel or something, one hopes. You can't tell me that in the years since the end of the last World War, no one has come up with an everlasting light bulb, a cigarette that doesn't kill you, an oil replacement that is man-made and a cure for cancer. It has all been done, patented and is waiting for the right time to be launched. And that time will be when the price is right. Come on down Europe, et al. And pay. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it does seem that all powerful corporations and people, many operating under the radar, have the means to solve certain problems of various countries and humanity and yet do nothing about it, but have meetings and committees, all of which cost a small fortune and all of which result in nothing. Much like the liberal Marxist red-nosed day in which we in developed countries are encouraged to send money to underdeveloped countries, rather like the National UK Lottery which funds various groups which it shouldn't, the Euro Lottery which funds God knows what, and like the BBC charities which fund bugger all like our TV licence. There is no shortage of money in the UK today, but there is a shortage of where it is spent, what on and how. The Bilderbergers were behind the push to put Britain into the Eurozone currency, and thank God it didn't work, as the media would be creating havoc over British National Party members handing out food parcels as Golden Dawn are doing in Greece. Remember, the membership of the EU is a paramount point to these groups, as it encourages massive amounts of money to pass from one country to another under the name of free trade. This also applies to massive amounts of immigrants and a poorer UK society that needs to move about for the ever-lessening job market. Remember, nothing is left to chance by these people, nothing is left to fate, and nothing is left to God. It is all in the plan. Whether they be Zionists, corporations, the Vatican or financiers, or a combination of all four, they do exist, and boy do they play havoc and let loose the dogs of war. And finally, small tits big bum Aussie. Joe Richards says the menu with dishes based on Julia Gillard was created as a private joke for an opposition party fundraiser and never intended it to go public. The Brisbane restaurant boss behind a menu which likened the Australian Prime Minister to a quail with small breasts and huge thighs has apologised for the derogatory comments. Mr Richards said he dropped the menu for a $1,000 £600 a head Liberal National Party fundraiser as a light-hearted joke, and that none of the mock menus were distributed on the tables or in the restaurant. Prime Minister Julia Gillard has accused her opponents of sexism, saying that the menu was grossly sexist and offensive, adding, "This is Tony Abbott's Liberals, this is what they are like." Opposition leader Abbott has apologised following the leaking of the menu, which was for a dinner held by a former Conservative minister and now opposition election candidate Mal Brough. Mr Abbott told reporters, "I condemn it as Mal Brough has. We all should be bigger and better than that," although he stood by Brough as an election candidate. This presenter says, well, the so-called Liberals in the UK could have a field day on our females in Parliament, couldn't they? Starting off with Sally Burkow, who really does need a burqa. The mind goes off in all directions, but it just shows how one so-called Liberal can get away with cattiness, whereas if a nationalist or ultra-conservative party member did the same thing, the papers would decimate them. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar and I wish you all a very good night.